Major strike action has been confirmed for workers on both the London Underground and the Overground network later this month. Well, it follows months of strike action in the ongoing bitter dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is at St James's Park for us this evening. Simon, talk us through the latest action then.
Lucretia, these strikes seem to be coming thick and fast, don't they? Well, today the RMT confirmed its members on the Tube and on London Overground would walk out on Friday, August the 19th. That's the day after yet another strike by RMT members on mainline trains and Network Rail. Tube workers last went on strike in June, and this time they'll be joined by colleagues from Arriva Rail London, which runs the London Overground. Now, this is partly a ratcheting up of existing disputes over pay and conditions, but it's also partly a protest at what the unions see as secrecy over a £3.6 billion funding deal for Transport for London. Sadiq Khan and his Transport Commissioner Andy Byford have refused to give details of this latest offer from the government, saying they need to scrutinise it. But that's been going on for 10 days and the unions are suspicious. They fear there are nasty strings attached, including possibly job cuts, the end of pension schemes, changes to pension schemes, and possibly the introduction of driverless trains. But anyway, whatever is in that deal, the Mayor has been set a deadline by ministers of midday tomorrow to accept it or reject it.
Oh, all right, Simon, thank you. Next tonight, talks between City Hall and the government over a deal for TfL have come right down to the wire. The deadline passed, with transport bosses still haggling over the government's final offer. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is here now. Simon, you've been speaking to the Transport Secretary this afternoon, haven't you? And what did Grant Shapps have to say? Because weren't we meant to have had an outcome by now?
Yes, he pointed out that this is a deal worth £3.6 billion, but it seems the Mayor and Transport for London still aren't prepared to sign up to it, despite that midday deadline. There's been a lot of talk about the strings attached. Would driverless tube trains be a condition? What about changes to TfL's pension scheme? Well, the Mayor and Transport for London have refused to discuss in public what those conditions might be. But earlier today, I was able to talk to the Transport Secretary and ask him what they involved.
All things to do with the things that Londoners see as their priorities. We want to support new trains and stations and lines and major tube upgrades and make sure that we maintain a world-class underground system. We're seeing things like driverless trains in Paris and other European cities, but we're dropping behind here.
So are driverless tube trains a condition of this deal?
Well, that's not something that will happen overnight, of course, but in years to come, of course, we'd expect tube lines to become driverless.
What about changes to TfL's pension scheme? Are you asking for those?
Well, look, it's very important that TfL do modernise their pension scheme. We've seen, I think it was the Glazer report, that the Mayor and TfL themselves commission say the same thing. We have gone as far as we possibly can on this. We're patiently answering questions and trying to be as helpful as possible. We're being as helpful as we can on the technicalities, but there is no more money, to be clear.
City Hall has admitted there are what it calls significant issues which still need to be resolved. At some point, TfL is going to have to share with the staff, and that means the unions, precisely what this funding package involves. For the Mayor, that could be politically quite tricky. But as far as the government is concerned, the ball is very much firmly now in his court.
All right, Simon, thank you.
Good evening. Thames Water is again urging us to use water wisely as the heat and dry weather continues and the possibility of a hosepipe ban becomes more likely. So there is some surprise. A plant in Beckton designed to supply water during a drought is shut down and unlikely to be working before next year. That, combined with continued large-scale leaks in London's system, has prompted concerned questions about the capital's water supply. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
In some countries, it's the Holy Grail, a way of turning seawater into tap water. But in Britain, the Beckton desalination plant is a one-off. The treatment works on the north bank of the Thames in East London was designed as an insurance policy against water shortages. The driest July on record and the threat of a drought is just what the desalination plant was built for. But there's little chance of it being switched on this summer. Instead, Thames Water is asking its customers to take shorter showers, turn off the taps when brushing their teeth and use watering cans rather than hoses in the garden. In a statement, Thames Water said, due to further necessary planned work, the plant is currently out of service Our teams are working as fast as possible to get it ready for use early next year to achieve protection to our supplies if we were to have another dry winter.
I'd like to know why the desalination plant is not being used this summer. Summer obviously is the time when water shortages are most likely. The plant should be available every summer. Why is it not being used this summer?
The Beckton plant, which opened in 2010, was opposed by environmentalists objecting to its carbon footprint.
They're quite expensive to run, they're quite energy intensive, so it's normally better to use other solutions if we can. This particular plant was associated with being an emergency measure before the 2012 Olympics, so that was one of the drivers for why it was put in place.
Thames Water hasn't ruled out a hosepipe ban, but the company's critics say it should prioritise fixing burst pipes.
They've got so many leaky pipes, they've actually got 256 Olympic-sized swimming pools in 1 month that are leaking alone. They really need to work on that. They've admitted it's not good enough, but it's not enough just to admit it, you've got to take action too.
Thames Water says it responded swiftly to this burst main in Kilburn today, although that's not how it seemed to some residents.
I rang them and said, help. Oh, what's that? And I told them where and I told them how much. They didn't seem to respond.
How long did it take them to get here?
A good 24 hours.
Tonight, Thames Water said even if the desalination plant was online, it might not be enough to prevent a hosepipe ban. Simon Harris, ITV News, Beckton.